few years ago, I was at an event in downtown Cincinnati and, just networking, having fun, getting a little bored of networking and hungry. They have a bunch of appetizers along the side of the wall. So I went over there to grab a taco. And as I went to take a bite out of the taco and it got closer to my face, boom, it just like crashed into my face. I was like, what? Like, what just happened? Did my mind forget to tell my mouth to open? And not really wanting to go network anymore because now I'm trying to think about my mouth, like what is happening? Plus I'm still hungry. So I put the taco back together, and as I move it closer to my mouth, I realize that my mouth can't open large enough to fit a taco. I'd given myself lockjaw. So before we talk about that story, I want to just introduce myself and share why we are here today. This is a picture of my family. It's fun to be in Denver. I was born here, which is pretty cool. I got in town yesterday, got to spend time with a couple of my cousins, my aunt, my sister, so I love getting to come here. I was married, I am married, to Holly. It'll be in 1 week, it'll be 26 years, which is pretty cool. And well, thank you. And it's been quite a journey. That's why I wrote my first book called Win a Home First, because I actually lost at home. And that's a story of just God's provision and just continuing. So us celebrating next week for 26 years is pretty cool. We met at University of Missouri, and then we started our career in Kansas City. I was a civil engineer by degree. We had our first kid in Kansas City. Her name's Kylie. She just graduated from University of South Carolina this a few weeks ago. I then switched jobs. I get a promotion. I moved to Denver, so I get to come back to Denver. We have our second child, that's Camden, and she's going to be a senior in high school. I then get promoted, move to Cincinnati. We have our third kid, Caleb, and he's 12, going to be 13. So the joke in our family is if I ever get promoted or we move to another city, it means we have to have a fourth kid. So apparently that's not going to happen because I've now left kind of that world. But the other thing when you live in 3 different cities is I have 3 favorite football teams. So it's Chiefs and Broncos and Bengals, and it's all awesome because one of them's going to win unless you got the Ravens or Steelers in the mix. But it is pretty cool. I'm glad all of you are here today. So I'm glad to be here, right? It's Denver. I get to see some friends and got to connect with a couple folks here in this room already. But I'm glad all of you are here. So thank you for coming here, taking time out of your day. According to the statistics, 70% of leaders say they've experienced a major personal or professional setback in the last 12 months. Truth be told, if they do that exact same survey to that same group next year, the other 30% will get captured. Because we know 100% of people have setbacks. We are promised we'll have trials and tribulations. So hitting a wall, having a setback, and that setback could be big or small, personally. It could be a marriage challenge. It could be a health challenge. I got to spend time with my cousin yesterday. He's 52 years old and been living on oxygen for 3 months due to cancer aggressively growing in his body. You never know what the setback's going to be. It could be an arm injury. Professionally, setbacks. We've all had them. We may have gotten fired. We may have, been demoted or been overlooked for promotion. Maybe we're not meeting our numbers this year, being impacted by tariffs or whatever the case may be, but we're always experiencing setbacks. However, we have a choice in how we respond. All leaders get knocked down. It's just the great leaders get back up quicker. So what I want to share with you today is the RISE framework, which will help you respond. I've had the opportunity to coach over 220 business leaders over the last few years that have been from solopreneurs all the way up to CEOs of a couple thousand person organizations. And it's what has been true in all of them is they all get knocked down. And so you will leave here with a framework that will help you rebound. So going back to the taco story, come to find out I had TMD or TMJ, that it's been, it's either joints or it's muscles. Some of you may have had that before. And I knew I grinded my teeth. Some of you may grind your teeth or have other outlets for your stress. Maybe it's back pains or, neck pains, but I was grinding my teeth so bad that I probably was doing it at stoplights. I was probably doing it when I was typing an email, just sitting there grinding. And the reason I was grinding my teeth was I wasn't happy in the job I was. So I went and I addressed the symptoms. I went and saw an acupuncturist. I went and saw a chiropractor. But at the end of the day, anytime we have a problem, we have to take care of the symptoms for sure, but we have to actually get to the root of the problem. And so for me, the root was I didn't feel I was being obedient to what God was calling me to do. At the time in my life, I was president of sales for a national organization. And for a few years prior, I'd had an executive coach, and I just loved the process. And I was acting like an executive coach when I would travel and meet with the sales team. If I went to Nashville to see David, I would talk about home. Are you dating your spouse? Are you being intentional with your kids? Are you getting to the gym? Are you doing quiet time? But also for work, hey, what's our hit rate on our proposals? What's your top 3 initiatives for this quarter? Like, I was talking about home and work. And I loved it. And I saw them getting better. So that's what I wanted to do. So therein lied the tension, which is why I had TMJ, because I was not making the move. And so maybe some of you can relate to where you're feeling called to go somewhere. You're called to start something. Maybe begin a relationship, begin a new endeavor, but you just don't want to do it. And I get it. Part of it was provision. I was making the most money I'd ever made. And to leave that to go be an entry-level coach and $0, I was like, I'm not doing that. At the time, I was 40 and my kids were 12, 8, and 4, so that was a dumb idea. Then, truth be told, I had some identity issues. It was pretty cool to have president of sales on a LinkedIn account versus a coach, which everyone's a coach on LinkedIn. And so that was weird, and I didn't like that part, but I knew God was calling me to it. I always tell my clients, be bold, be courageous, go after your dreams. Well, in this situation, I didn't. Unfortunately, I was told I had to move on. We were owned by private equity. We went to be sold. We were unsuccessful being sold. So anytime you're owned by private equity and they can't sell the company, they pivot. And going from national to regional, you don't need a national president of sales anymore. So I was fired. I call my wife and I say, babe, I got good news and I got bad news.
What do you want first?
The bad news is I was fired. The good news is I got a 4-month severance package. Can I try coaching? And she said, yeah. You have 4 months and then get a real job. And so I hustled, and in those 4 months, I got my salary to about 50%. Not 50% of what I made, but to this level of 50%. If I could find something else to help me, then I'm going all in. Thanks to God's provision, someone in Cincinnati they were a manufacturer, they needed help with sales and marketing. So I got an opportunity. And so that was the other 50%. So then it began this journey of trying to grow coaching while I was still doing the sales and manufacturing. So over the course of time, I had small speaking engagements. This is in a buddy's family room. I got another speaking engagement where it started to be bigger. I then wrote my first book called Win a Home First. I made my family wear these t-shirts hoping they'd sell more books. It didn't necessarily work, but it's been a sweet opportunity. Someone in Forbes magazine says 1 of 7 books everyone on your team should read. So it's opened up a lot of doors. Then next I had an opportunity to be on a podcast, national podcast called Family Life. I then launched my own podcast called Win a Home First. And I don't share any of that to brag, but that idea of any time we're making a move, maybe we're trying to improve a relationship, maybe in our marriage, we start dating our spouse, and maybe we even get counseling, and we're starting making those steps. Or maybe at work, you're starting to build in the culture. You put together the culture playbook, you're having your one-on-one meetings with your team, you're doing all these right steps. These were the green lights I was seeing in my life. So in January this particular year, this is my family at that time, we made the decision we're going all in. We're jumping all into coaching. Well, it was on March 1st, 2020.
Oh, man.
Not the best time to go all into coaching and speaking. Well, I don't want to go down memory lane for COVID for everybody because it was not awesome. But on Friday the 13th, which I'm not a superstitious guy, but I can't believe this all happened on Friday the 13th, but that was the mask mandates, that was stay at home, that all took place on that Friday. Well, on that day, I was not happy-go-lucky like Joey here. Instead, I received emails canceling speaking engagements and workshops. In that day, 35% of my revenue vanished. Now I know some of you lost your job at the time, maybe even during COVID you lost some loved ones, and sorry for that. For us, for our family, losing 35% of our revenue on Friday, May 13th, or March 13th was awful and scary. And then no wonder what's going to happen in the 65%. What's next? I started working all the time. I was stressed. I was in the home office. I was back to skipping the gym. I was back to skipping really everything. I was not fun to be with. I was stressed. And I was mad. And I was mad at God. God, we did this together, right? 50-50, 75-25, 90-10, eventually 100-0. I did my part. What about you? Where are you at, God? And so I have some journal entries during that time. March 23rd, 2020, Lord, I need you. I'm just beat down, tired and frustrated. Business seems down and out. Maybe some of you have felt that way, where you took that leap, you were obedient, you got out of the boat, but yet it felt like God's abandoned you. That's how I felt. It doesn't get much better. March 25th, a couple days later, God, I'm really trying to slow down my mind. I had such a panic or rush feeling in the past about how I had to grow the business or else ... A lot of it was out of comparison. Please forgive me. A lot of it out of fear. Please forgive me. So maybe some of you can relate to this moment where it's just not working. You're looking around, you're comparing yourself to others. That is where I was at because it was not going as planned. It was not going the way I thought the prayers were. April 1st, I aggressively circled, what am I supposed to do? I was at my knees. I didn't know how I was going to provide for my family. Was this the worst mistake I'd made? What am I doing? So good news is I got some answers, which I'll share with you. Bad news is it's not a silver bullet. It was a process. So over the course of some weeks, some months, I was struggling. I remember listening to songs on repeat, like The Blessing from Elevation, just listening on repeat, just trying to help myself because mindset was not good. At the time, I was reading Acts 8, 9, and 10. And in the ESV, the English Standard Version, there's a phrase, rise and go, that hits in 3 different chapters. And I never really noticed it any time in my life before. Acts 8. A man by the name of Philip is to rise and go and to go meet with a eunuch who works for the Ethiopian queen. I'm sure he had other stuff to do. I'm sure he didn't want to go do it. He had his own to-do list. He probably had some fears and doubts going talking to royalty. But yet, he went. Next, a story in Acts 9 we're all familiar with as far as a guy by the name of Saul is converted to Paul. There's a part inside that story I never really paid attention to. A man by the name of Ananias is told to rise and go to go meet Saul. I'm sure he didn't want to do that. That's like being told to go talk to Hitler or Putin or whoever your bad guy is. Saul, the biggest persecutor against Christians at that time, but yet he went. And then we get to Acts 10, and Peter is told to rise and go meet 3 men that Cornelius sent, and now he's going to have a conversation with Gentiles. Once again, I'm sure Peter had his doubts and his fear. He'd already been kicked in the teeth a few times. Why go again? So I read these 3 chapters, and I just feel God's calling me to rise and go, like to get out of my pity party and out of my basement office and go do something about it and respond to it. During quiet times, God then points me to a graph that I drew in my book, Went Home First. I have a lot of clients call me. They're all frustrated. They're working on their marriage. They're doing great. Then all of a sudden they get in an argument with their spouse. Or they're working on their temper with their kids and not losing it. They've been great for a while. Then all of a sudden the kid doesn't brush their teeth last night. They yell at them. And so clients will call, we'll have a conversation. I'll draw out this to say, listen, we want everything to go up and to the right. And we kind of think it does until we zoom in and there's peaks and valleys. But what happens is when we're in that valley, the devil says, you'll never be a good parent. You'll always lose your temper. You'll never get that marriage restored again. You're always going to be a bad spouse. You thought you were turning the company around, but man, you've had a bad quarter, culture's going downhill. You're always going to be a bad boss. That's what the devil tells us when we're in these valleys. And I'll draw this out for my clients and tell them, hey, that's a lie. Don't believe the lie. We'll get back up in the right. But here, God is reminding me of something I kind of forgot. Next, I get this visual that in the same graph, it's going to be a ladder to get out. There's going to be steps to grow out. A lot of times we've seen this clip from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation where Chevy Chase is on the ladder and very quickly, he just falls down. The same thing happens in our life when we try to get out too quick. It takes steps. The other challenge we see a lot is when we are in the valley, when we've had our own taco moment, we start looking around. What's everyone else doing? We look left, we look right. This is a picture of 2016 Olympics where the South African swimmer had beat Michael Phelps numerous times. But in this particular race, and experts say in this particular moment, Michael Phelps took off because the South African was looking left. And if any of you have ever ran or swam, you've had a coach yelling in your ear saying, don't look left, don't look right, stay in your lane. And the same is true for us. And so I started to write and put pieces together to help me. But as clients would call, I would say, hey, read this blog I wrote this morning. Read this. And before I knew it, it got battle tested and helped my clients get back up and help friends. So I put it together in a book called Rise and Go. And the first 10 chapters are to give you the courage to get up. The next 10 are to give you the confidence to move forward. So anytime you write a book, you send it off to get endorsements. And every once in a while, you get you get endorsements that are like, did they read the book? This is a great book to help you rise and go. It's like, my 12-year-old could have wrote that. But there's other times you get endorsements that you're like, whoa, there's something here. And so for me, Ron Kitchens is a nonprofit leader. He wrote a book called Uniquely You that I just loved. And I've been connected to Ron. I like him as a leader, but I got this. And it says, when Cory asked me to read and review Rise and Go, unbeknownst to him, I was at one of my lowest points of my life. My career was in flux. I was in the middle of a health crisis. And I discovered I could not answer the question, what do you want? For me, Rise and Go has become my daily playbook for leading myself, my business, my home. I don't share this to brag. The reason I'm sharing this is he was someone I was paying attention to. And it looked like life was up and to the right. And we don't know when we're going to hit that wall at any point. Health, marriage, finances. For him, it was a hip surgery as well as some burnout. We don't know when we're going to hit it. We don't know when that taco moment is for each of us. So what I want to share with you is this framework, the RISE framework, to help you have a toolkit when you leave here. Some of these questions that I'll be asking are going to be hard. You won't write down your answers as they come to mind as we're here. But over the next week or two, think about it. Take them to God. What are the answers to these questions? Talk to your spouse. Talk to your friends. So in the RISE framework, the first R is recalibrate. Let's give an overview of RISE and we'll dive into each one. But anytime that we are going in a direction, we have to recalibrate to make sure, are we going the direction we want? Are we going the direction our boss is telling us to go or culture is telling us to go? Next is intentionality. When we're in that valley, we have to have intentionality. This is not a message about schedule and time management, but we'll be talking about mindset. S is surround. Coaches, mentors, people in your life. Who are you surrounding yourself with? And the last is encourage. Right? You're saying, Cory, this isn't about me. Encourage about others. That's right. The first three are about you. But the last one's about encourage. How can you encourage someone else? So diving into these, there's a lot of different questions you could process and think about with the word recalibrate. And I'll walk through different questions with leaders as I'm working through them. But the one I want to share with you today is, what do you want? This is the question Ron mentioned in that endorsement he couldn't answer. What do you want? And for some of you, as you hear that, you're like, we're not supposed to answer. We're supposed to be good Christian leaders. We're supposed to serve others. The very first words that John captures Jesus saying in the book of John is, what are you seeking? When the blind man comes to Jesus to be healed, Jesus says, what do you want healed? All of us, or at least me, I'd assume he wanted his sight. Well, maybe he's got a broken marriage. Maybe his back hurts worse than his eyesight. He's never had eyesight. So what do you want? As I mentioned that, some of you are thinking something old. Maybe that you used to do. Maybe you used to play piano and you're thinking about playing it again. Maybe it's something new, starting a new endeavor, writing a book, pursuing a new relationship. Delight in the Lord, he'll give you the desires of your heart. These ideas that you're having are something God's probably nudging you to go after. To share a story about a client, his name's Kyle. I asked him this question. He had the long list of items on the paper, a lot of us would. To be a better parent, to be a better spouse, to be a better leader. But on the list it said to paint again. I was like, what? Tell me more. He's like, I used to paint all the time. Then got married, I painted less. Then I had our daughter, painted less. And then kept climbing up the ladder, I painted less. I said, what if you started painting again and you actually showed up better as a spouse? You showed up better as a parent, as a leader. So after twisting his arm a little bit, he believed me. And so over the next few coaching calls, over those next few weeks, we talked about home, work. But it's also like, hey, have you bought any canvases? Have you started painting? One day I get a delivery to my house, and it's this gorgeous painting. To be honest, I didn't know what kind of painter I was promoting. I didn't know if he was a crappy painter or what. But I get this, and it's amazing. And it's in a focal point of our home. It's a 4-person tandem bike to be me and the 3 other guys that were on this coaching call. The reason it matters why you answer this question over this next week is because when you're in the valley, usually it's pretty foggy. When you have that taco moment in your life, it's foggy. You don't know what's next. But when you have the answer to what you want, it gives you vision. And when there's vision, there's momentum. Second question is intentionality. As I mentioned, we're not going to talk about time right now. What we're going to be talking, time management, what we're going to be talking about is, what are you focused on? What we focus on expands. So here I am in Denver this week. I'll be flying to Cincinnati. When I walk in the door to see Holly, she could say 10 things to me. If one of them is negative, if we're doing good and we're dating each other again and we're having good conversations, I hear that one negative thing, it bounces off. However, I'm optimistic that's what's going to happen. However, when I've traveled and we've been in these seasons where we're disconnected a little bit, I'll walk in, she'll say those same 10 things, 9 positive, 1 negative, I hear the 1 negative. I'm like, ugh, I knew she wasn't supportive of me traveling. I knew she didn't like this. I learned this the hard way. In 2020, I took my daughter to South Carolina, and we went to a coach's event, and that first night, we break off into pairs. And we answer questions, what are breakthroughs in your life, and what are you looking forward to? And so we answer these questions. And she goes first and telling me the answers, and I'm an emotional dad. I was tearing up. Like, oh, it's so good, babe, that's awesome. She's talking about dance and her friends, and then it's my turn. So then I shared all my answers. And I said, babe, what do you think? And she said, Dad, you're the smartest guy I've ever met. Just kidding. She didn't say that. She said, Dad, you sound angry. Your kids ever told you sound angry? Your spouse, friends? So as we unpacked the answers, all my answers were, I've written book number 1. I want to write more and more and more. I've had some cool clients, but I want more and more and more. I've had some cool speaking engagements, but I want more and more and more. My daughter was 16 at the time, and she could tell that I was more focused on the gap than the gain. That I was more focused on the unchecked boxes of my life than the check boxes. I came home from that trip. I mean, it rocked my world. And we've all heard of gratitude journals and writing things down. I'd never done it, but I started doing it. I started writing down 3 things a night that I'm grateful for every day. And it totally changed my mindset. Sometimes I'm grateful that I had a taco in my mouth and it worked. Other times I'm grateful that I had to speak in an engagement. It doesn't matter, but it's changed my outlook. It's had such an impact on me and on my family that we were back there a few weeks ago for spring break. We went to that exact same pier to take that exact same picture, except I had a little more wrinkles and it was a little different, but same idea. But to take that exact same picture because it was monumental in our family, because I started focusing on the positives. So answering this question, why does that matter to you? Even if you aren't in your valley moment right now, it's because it starts shifting the mindset. At the same time, I was reminded of Genesis 1. And what I found to be fascinating, God pointed me to this idea while I was reading it, because I'd never thought about it before, but that at the end of every day, when God created everything, after every day, he said, and it was good. He did not say, man, what's going to happen when I have to do all vegetation? That's going to be stressful. What's going to happen when I have to do man and woman? It was good for each and every day. So for you, where you focus your energy, it expands. Next is surround. When we get in a valley, our default is just isolation. Our phone, our couch. Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's social media, maybe it's whatever, but we go to isolation. My encouragement, if you're not in a valley right now, identify who is your tribe. We've all talked about this before. I've heard about this before. But when I was president of sales for this company, I was traveling every single week. During the week, I was super employee. During the weekend, I was trying to be super dad, super husband, and make up for lost time. I'm talking to my coach, and I'm just like, man, I'm tired. I'm burned out. And as we reflected on it, he basically was like, well, no one's pouring into you. You're pouring into everyone else. You have no friends. It's like, oh, man. We're not going to do a show of hands who doesn't have any friends. I'll say that was me. And that was true. I had buddies that I could go have a beer or coffee with, but it was surface level. It was sports and weather. That's what we talked about. So I put together a list of guys that I was meeting with occasionally, and I basically, what I did is I went speed dating with them. I went and met with them, and if we could talk deeper, I was like, yeah, I like that guy. I want more of that in my life. When we talked about the ups and downs of our marriage, the ups and downs of parenting, getting burned out at work or purpose, or what's our hopes and our dreams, that's when I was like, I want more of them. So I put together a group. We meet every Thursday. So for each of you, like, who is that group? Who can you call? Who can you reach out to? A client called me at a very similar situation as myself, where he was burned out. He had no friends, because it's a real thing. We all have friends in college, and it's great. Then we get married and have kids, corporate ladder, all the deal. Same thing happens with Brayton. And I explained, you got to do something. What do you like doing? He goes, I love kayaking. I said, awesome. Invite some guys, go kayaking, have a good time. I get an invite in my calendar to go kayaking. So I go kayaking, I have a great time, but it's an hour and a half away from my house. It was 6 a.m. So we have a good time. At the end, I say, Brayton, this was awesome. I'm not coming back again. It's too early, it's too far, but keep doing it. And he's still doing it with guys. So who is helping you up that ladder? Why that's important as a leader is because by yourself, we've heard it before, you can go far. No, you can't. You can go fast. With others, you can go far. So identify who you're going with. This last one on this rise is encourage. Who can you encourage? What's interesting about encouragement, and we've all reaped the benefits of this, but sometimes we forget it, is when you are encouraging someone else, you actually get encouraged. And the joke with some of my buddies is if they get a bunch of texts from me, they're probably like, Cory must be having a down day, because he's encouraging, he's reaching out. So for each of you, and the other cool part about when you pray about who to encourage, God's probably putting someone on your heart that may be having their taco moment. They may be down in the dumps. I think all of us can relate to when we have reached out to someone and they're like, you have no idea how much your phone call meant to me that day or that text. So when you get in that valley, think through proactively, how can you encourage somebody else? As I mentioned, I kind of bipolar when it comes to football in the fall, but living in Cincinnati, getting to see Joe Burrow, it's been interesting to watch him, because anytime you see somebody from the outside, it's like, man, their life's up and to the right. There are no valleys. But paying attention and living in Cincinnati, seeing Joe Burrow, he grew up in Southeast Ohio, always wanted to play for Ohio State. He gets a chance to go to Ohio State. That's a peak. Dream comes true. He got 0 playing time. That's a valley. He then sends a whole bunch of tweets to a bunch of different schools. He gets picked up by LSU. That's a peak. And Heisman and national championship, huge peak. But then he gets drafted by the Bengals. That's a valley. Especially when you're number 1 draft pick, because that team's really bad. But he is drafted number 1. But he breaks his leg year 1. That's a valley. He goes on, peak, Super Bowl, but even in the year of the Super Bowl, most sacked quarterback of all of NFL that year. Well, it was interesting living in Cincinnati, hearing everyone talk about, because the team never gave up. Keep losing, they keep coming back. Media would always say, hey, well, how do you keep coming back and supporting Joe Cool? And they all would independently say, because he has a mantra, that he is not going to accept losing. So for each of you, what's your mantra? Maybe it's I rise and go. That when you get knocked down, when you have your taco moment, when you hit that valley, everyone looks around in your family. It's like, that's okay. Mom's been knocked down before, but she gets back up. Dad's been knocked down before, but he gets back up. Your coworkers, like, that's okay. He's going to get back up. We've had a rough quarter. We just lost our biggest customer, but our leader, he's fine. She's fine. So as you leave here, I hope your next setback is never, but I hope it's a long ways away, but we know that's not a reality. So this idea that as you hit a setback, to recalibrate, what are you going after? Intentional. Where is your mind, right? Right thinking leads to right feelings, lead to right actions. Are you being intentional with your thoughts? To next, are you spending time with those that love you and are supporting you? And are you encouraging people along the way? So, thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.